Okay, good afternoon. This is second of three videos I will have done by the end of today. Today's the 19th. I thought it was the 18th, but it's the 19th. The first video was about the final assignment at the end of the semester. And as I said a couple of times throughout that, I'm going to be continuing to revisit that throughout the rest of the semester. But you also will see that there's a module document already online and on Canvas to give you what I read out to everybody. And again, not realizing for about half of the time that I read it, I didn't have it up on the screen. But you do have the actual copy of that. This video will be devoted to the collective mindset itself as we go through the balance of the chapters. If I'm not mistaken, it's the next to the last chapter or the next to the next to the last chapter as I look for it in a moment. And I'm going to get up and close the door because my wife has MSNBC on and it's distracting me. So give me a second. And even as you see me walk back and forth to the screen and say, well, there's a chubby old guy, but the chubby old guy lost about 10 pounds from having been sick. And I'm hoping that he doesn't necessarily put it back on. I do feel better. I'm a little bit of a hypochondriac, but the short story is I still get tired pretty quickly too. So if I get tired, I'll tell you I'm too tired. I'll just go to the next place. All right, so I'm going to spend we've already spoken about this pretty nicely too. We talked about design thinking last week, and that's something I really want you to pay attention to as you do your homework, your final assignment. Because really what we're talking about is creating ways, and I'll probably model some of that, creating ways to think differently. I hate the term I'm going to use. Here it comes. I don't like this phrase. It's one of those things I was going to scream when I hear it. Here it comes. To think, fill in the blank, out of the box. And just to stay with that last chapter for a second, the bottom line is we don't particularly reward people for doing that in leadership. And that's why we come up with the same stupid solutions to things that didn't work in the first place. So we go from there. All right, another piece of the collective mind, that was from the previous chapter. It would have been chapter 7. So what we're going to do is just spend some time on an important issue here. I've already offered that poem up to you, the Mayan poem. You did a nice job responding to what you thought that meant in terms of your own personal experiences and your school experience and your leadership experiences. And then we go over to we go over to chapter 8, which starts on page 77. And what I do here is kind of reiterate and supplement what the book is saying about this, that, and the other thing. I also want to point out there is a pretty good reference list at the end of this book in case you're looking for additional readings to do to learn about any parts of this. You may want to do that if you are looking for some theories that you'd like to apply, change theories that you'd like to apply to your final assignment. Okay, 2 quotes. Here they are. All right, nothing all that exotic. Here they are. One is, I skate to where the puck is going. I'm not much of a hockey fan, but I do know who Wayne Gretzky is and was. And that's something that Gretzky said. And now Bill Russell was the forward. I think it was a center. It might have been a center for the Boston Celtics back before any of you were born. We said something similar to that. He always knew where Havlicek was going when he passed up the court. He knew Havlicek would be there without even looking up, because they were the 5 guys on the team, or the 5 people on the basketball floor. I think so. Were so tuned into each other, so presenced among each other that they knew how to collegially anticipate each other's moods and moves without without really talking about them. And Gretzky, by way of being a hockey player, says the same premise when he says, I skate to where the puck is going. Their instincts, it's a wrong word. Instincts means like something that's inborn. I don't think it's an instinct. I think it's a learned behavior when you practice it over and over again and take the time to be sensitive to the ideas of what other people are thinking and doing in terms of what a team should be, what a group should be. Now, there's plenty of research to say, well, this particular chapter is about collegiality and building community. And I get a little sarcastic when I talk about this chapter because people talk the talk, but they don't necessarily walk it. It's a lot easier to decide people. No, I always use some of the same examples. The captain of the Titanic, when he hit the old iceberg and they told him that he hit an iceberg, didn't have a meeting of everyone and where they voted on whether they should abandon ship. He made the command decision. He had to do that. That was why he had these stripes on his shoulder, or whatever it is the captains wear. Sure, there are times when, or a general or some kind of emergency, if you're a principal and someone says there's a fire in the bathroom, you don't scratch your head and say, "What should I do?" You pull the alarm and you get all those kids out of there. You don't have time to look for a consensus or whether there's a better idea than that. That's the premise. That's the system's demand, and you're going to do that way. But the truth is that there's plenty of places where so-called collegiality and collaboration, which I've been singing at you since September or maybe late August. I forget when the course started. So you've heard me sing this, and you've heard it from other professors and your own readings and your own experiences as well. I think I probably used this example. I'm pretty sure I did when I was doing a site visit for a administrative intern a couple of years ago. It was a summer internship. So I went to summer school in a high school in Suffolk County. It was a huge high school, and I asked to meet with this student's cooperating administrator who happened to be the principal. So I had never met the person before. I meet the person, and the person really didn't want to talk to me, not because he didn't like me, it was because he thought he was pretty busy. I guess that he was. I'm not so sure, but he thought he was. So basically what I was trying to do, because my student was telling me that he doesn't give her anything to do, and she wanted things to do to learn some things. So I was trying to find a nice way to say that to him. I said, and I sort of said something like that. And he said, "Well, I'm working on my master schedule for the coming school year, and I make the schedule. Nobody makes that schedule but me. I make the schedule." And that was it. I wasn't about to try to dent this man's thinking, although I didn't believe him, because clearly people had come to him and whispered in his ear that, "Hey, I need ninth period off because I have to get the football players dressed for practice before in a timely way." Or someone might come and say, "Hey, I have babysitting needs. I don't think these things don't happen in the morning, and sometimes my babysitter shows up a little late. Can you give me the first period as a duty period or some kind of free period off? And I'll make it up to you by doing bus duty," or something like that. Those are the kinds of the transactional in comparison to transformational, which is what Dr. B would advocate. And most professors, I can't think of a professor who wouldn't advocate it on whole, more often than not, to practice leadership that transforms other people to want to lead with you and for you sometimes. That's what collegiality and collaboration speak to, because all the current research, really going back to the post-World War II, believe it or not, but even accents even that much more as you move up well into the 21st century at this point, speaks to the value of collegiality and collaboration when people skate to the puck without being told what to do. And so the first thing we spoke about, and I'm not going to read the whole piece to you, was the title of what you find on 77. It speaks about the value of the sum, SUM, right? When you recognize that change is a result of a group's capacity to co-generate new ways to realize. That's a great sentence. I think I wrote that sentence. You know, three people wrote this book, but I can tell where I wrote a sentence, and I think that's mine. At least I'm going to tell you that it is. All right. Let me say it again. I like the lyrics so much. All right. Collective mindset recognizes that change is a result of a group's capacity, key word, to co-generate new ways to realize. Only then can you transform. When did you transform? When did you decide not to vote Republican anymore or not to vote Democratic anymore? Did something give you a new way to realize? When did you decide that you love somebody and wanted to be with that person forever? That was a new way to realize. That was a transformational moment. That's when we turn lead into gold and such. And so this co-generation, though, is really not something you can snap your finger about. People need to learn how to do this. It's not something that you just falls out of a tree, or you just pick a fruit off the tree and you eat it, and suddenly you know all about collaboration. For some people, it's part of what they do, who they are in their own upbringing and nurturing. And for others, it's not. It's a learned behavior. Okay, where they were born, what their family's about, the culture that they've grown up in, ethnic culture sometimes, and so forth. And you can see where that all goes back to. If you look at the graphic on page 78, and again, I always apologize for the coloring here. You'll see that collegiality and building community is the last of the 5 focus areas. Those 5 focus areas together are the building blocks for the reflective practices that you mean to put into action in order to change what your school's going to do. And in your case, more likely than not, to change how you might approach teaching, working with the ENL babies. Some of you may have had Dr. Barbara Koza, I never remember the title of the book, but she wrote a book, I think in 2018, that I have used in this course, actually, that is about the multi-age classroom, where she's arguing with good research to show that school systems, and there are a few, and not too many, have been empowered for one reason or another to have grades kind of melted together. And what they found is that the students, if the teachers are trained properly, the students will respond very nicely to that. Them walking in between grades 1 and 3, 3rd graders helping 2nd graders, 10th graders helping 9th graders. Although I don't think she was talking about secondary school so much. Now, I'm really going to age myself. It's not a person who I'm speaking to right now is going to have a clue what I'm talking about, but it did drop into my bald head. And here it comes. This past weekend, I had one of these crazy cable stations that plays old situation comedies all day long. And on the weekends, plays really old movies and serials that are out there. This past weekend, there was a marathon of the Little Rascals. Now, I know there was a movie about the Little Rascals back in the 80s. Maybe some of you have seen that. But this goes back to literally to the late 20s and 30s, and I think maybe a little bit into the 40s. And it's about a group of kids who are kind of rascals, but basically, all good kids who work together and collaborate with each other. They know how to work with each other to do some of the commit some of the mischief they have. A lot of times when you watch a sports movie where somehow I can't think of a recent one, but what's that Disney one? What's the Ducks? Something with the Ducks, the Mighty Ducks. Where they're a terrible hockey team, and suddenly they're a great hockey team because they sort of gel and collaborate, and they know how to work with each other. That's an example of a school system that knows how to work with each other and step up. It's very minor, not minor actually. It was kind of a dramatic thing I saw once when I was actually I was an administrator in the district, and I got to a building early to meet with the principal, and a crazy ice storm broke out. I mean, a nutty, a cuckoo I've never seen before or since ice storm came up like out of nowhere. I mean, everything froze solid like in 20 minutes. I mean, I happened to have beaten at this. So I'm in the school with maybe 4 or 5 other teachers. And I was not the principal. I was just there with these 4 or 5 other teachers, all of whom I had known very well because I had worked in that building before becoming an administrator. And there are kids who were walking to school. Some who had their parents driving to school, although it was really treacherous to go anywhere on 4 wheels, who were showing up. So we maybe had 50 to 75 kids of 800, no, 900 kids in the building with not knowing where to go or what to do because none of the teachers had made it in, except for these 5 or 6 and myself. And one of the teachers just stepped up. It's okay. He says, we're all going to go into the auditorium. They don't call it that, but that's what it was. And we're going to do this, and this. And we're going to get them to work on this, and this. And maybe an hour later, you had maybe another 100 kids showing up. And then the teachers began to straggle in. And the principal only lived about 2 blocks from the school, just passed away. Good guy. He came in, he was flabbergasted. Though then again, he said, you know what? He said, my staff knew what to do because the staff just knew how to work with each other. And they largely did. It was kind of a magical thing to talk about. And so, this chapter speaks to several ideas. One of them is the Bion inclusion idea. I just want to walk up past you again. Bion, B-I-O-N, and Schutz talk about how groups evolve, how they grow, and how they grow through 3 stages. He called them inclusion, control, and affection. I don't like that word affection. I'm not sure why. So I usually change it to cohesion. And if you watch a group closely, a group that's been nurtured to begin to work with each other, they work on including everybody. They work on giving each other control of how things may go. And they work on trying to be as cohesive and honorable for other people's points of view. That's a magical group. And it exists. It exists in lots of places. I had a nephew who enlisted in the Army last year and wanted to be an Army Ranger. It was his life dream to be an Army Ranger. He goes through the basic training, he sails through that, and then he gets into Ranger School. And one of the tasks he had to do was carry a huge, I think 7 or 8 of them had to carry a huge log. I'm not sure it was a log or a block of wood. I'm making up the number. It was 80 or 900 pounds heavy. It was a very heavy, clumsy piece of wood. And they had to get it from point X to point Y. So they were struggling with that, and they figured out ways to get it up on their shoulders and to be able to move slowly towards the target point. And one of the recruits slipped. Well, he goes down, and the log goes down. In fact, it kind of injures my nephew, his hip actually, and they didn't finish. And guess what? They got flunked out. I'm not sure I agree with that, but that's what they got flunked out of the Ranger School because one fella wasn't able to do it, and they hadn't figured out a way for them to be a team. A little scary, but that's understandable to some extent. So we talk about Bion and Schutz. We talk about Lencioni. We make a big deal out of Lencioni. Before we talked about Lencioni and what a group needs, beginning with trust, always beginning with trust, and so forth. And I'll put a video up or something about that when I remember to do that. Then we talk about Sengei's team disciplines, team learning. Here it comes again. You see, Sengei asserts that when an organization teaches their teams how to teach each other to be teams, they're going to be the whole organization is going to be stronger and more effective. I don't know if this is the right metaphor, but a vital glue adhesive. I'm not sure that's the right word. Everyone's got to be part of, for the whole with a W to be whole as such. Now, some of the essential points we've already addressed here, beginning on page 81. We've spoken about this phrase, none of us is as smart as all of us. And I've asked you way back in the beginning whether you agreed with that. And it's such a cutesy thing to believe, but I've already, I think, debunked it by saying none of us that's not true. You can't all be smart together until you know how to be smart together. Look what's going on in the House of Representatives as we speak. Is that cohesion? Is that collaboration? It's a circus. It's a disgrace, and I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. It's a clear example of lack of collaboration and collegiate. It just is. All right. We talked about Wohlstetter a few times along the way. Wohlstetter has pointed out that there are 5 pieces to how an organization can be smarter together, beginning with knowing what their power boundaries are, having the skills to look at data, being sure that you're communicating, are just 3 examples of that. And so we can't overlook Wohlstetter again. And in terms of themes and issues that you may want to consider, would be, again, how do you estimate how well your school collaborates? I think you kind of answered that in the last discussion question, but you may want to take another look at that. What strategies would you use? How do you mitigate this? How do you make it go away? Smiling, there are ways. The best way to do that is to create new experiences for them to want to work with each other as such. We talked about Wohlstetter, talking about the dysfunctions of a group. Lencioni, about the dysfunctions of a group, especially beginning with the lack of trust. But we also talked about Wohlstetter, talking about really getting clear about what power means. Almost all of you, in your discussion question about the Mayan poem, you said the same thing in a certain sense. Well, my leader, my leader, my leader. And as a couple of you, I kind of responded to you by saying, if you're still thinking about my leader, then something's missing. I don't hear the word or see the word that begins with a W and ends with an A as such. And the question then becomes, as to what extent do you believe your school's culture enhances or obstructs a stakeholders group ability to be engaged and effective? I'm going to let that marinate. I'm tempted to give you that as your discussion question for this week. I might, but I probably won't, because I want to go to the next. I want to stick with the futuring piece, because some of the futuring things, as you know, overlap with that. Which brings me really to the last 2 chapters. And chapter 9 is the magic wand chapter. Chapter 10 is a kind of wrap up, but chapter 9 really takes it home. So pay close attention to that, because that's going to be the assignment you have for the last week of this, the last week of this month, as such. Okay, so we've done 2 videos, right? The first one was, as I said, the assignment for the end of the year, end of the semester. Make sure that you read it and make sure that you watch the video. Although I know that the video worked, but I didn't show the memo until about halfway through. But you have the memo; it's already up on Canvas, and we're going to keep coming back to that. And then I reminded about the October 30th assignment, and that here we are now in the second video with the collective mindset chapter. We're just about done with the book. Okay, I wasn't so sure, to be honest with you, whether this book was impacting you, affecting you, making you think about it. And I'm starting to see some points that are emerging that I know came from the book, and I was very grateful, not personally, out of a sense of pride. I was very grateful that you began to internalize some of these issues. As you see that change is what it's all about. If you're in this program and you're not interested in in implementing changes should not be in the program. He said smugly. Okay, one more video. Don't go away.